Hey guys, recently at work we had an application that got compromised, so I figured this would be a good excuse to make a video and go over how to dissect an attack like this. So you see here on my screen, Chrome, I have basically the core data that was in the file that got uploaded to our application server through an exploit. So unfortunately, in our case, we were running an old, outdated version of a piece of software, and sadly no one was maintaining it. It wasn't being patched. So there were a couple of glaring vulnerabilities and exploits in it. So one of the exploits that was used gave the person the ability to upload a file wherever they wanted in the application, and basically it became part of the application. So in certain situations, this file will be accessed and just become part of the core application. Anyway, so you see here you have a whole bunch of function calls, but really the data itself inside is a bunch of base64 encoded data. And in this situation, it was really easy to figure out, what the data actually, what the encoding format is and what's being done. Because all the functions are right here. It's all in one place. It's just a very simple, I guess technically one line piece of code. Other attacks, you might see a string of base64 encoded data in one file, and another file might call it, shift a bunch of things around. It might be much more obfuscated and hard to kind of track down and figure out how to really deobfuscate it and get the underlying data behind it. So this was really easy to go through. And if you ever do run into a situation where you have some sort of attack that you want to analyze, and you see a whole bunch of base64 encoded data, or you don't know what this data is, or how to tell that it's base64 encoded data, just look for two equal signs or one equal sign at the end. The equal signs at the end of base64 encoded data mean they're basically there for padding. I see two equal signs a lot. I've seen one sometimes. It's not always going to be there. Since they're used for padding, there might be some situations where you don't need padding, so you won't have equal signs. In that case, I would just look at the character sets. For me, just being familiar with base64 encoded data, I guess naturally it just looks like base64 encoded data. You have uppercase, lowercase, digits, slashes, pluses. It just looks like the character set that base64 uses. So anyway, since this was so simple, it wasn't really that tricky to kind of go through and deobfuscate. So let's do that now. But I did want to mention before that it's usually not like this, and you usually have to kind of track down a whole bunch of different pieces of text and follow a path and go from there. But base64 encoding is used a lot in attacks like these. So I'm actually gonna not run this, but get the class, the underlying classes and methods and everything that's basically inside this data by deobfuscating it. So let me do that real quick. Don't want to eval it. So before I run this, I just want to explain actually what these functions are doing. So you have all this huge amount of base64 encoded text, and then you have a function that's decoding it. So it's taking it out of the base64 format. From there, whoever wrote this script decided that the data before it's base64 encoded should be compressed using gzip. So they're calling a gzip uncompress function, which will uncompress this data after it's been decoded. And then from there, eval just actually executes it, which is bad. So anyway, let me actually pull this up. So this is a mess. I was looking over this at work a few weeks ago, and I spent hours scanning over, and I still only understand a fraction of it, just because there's so many different pieces to it. Let me try to format it a little bit better. All right, so here's the the base64 encoded data um, decoded and uncompressed. So you can see that the code itself that they've written is really obfuscated, which makes it really hard to follow and kind of a pain, to be honest. Um, so you have a whole bunch of classes. You have a whole bunch of very similarly named classes, and this is what I really hated about digging through this, is that if you look at these classes, you see class F underscore 33890. It looks the same, right? Well, the way that they make it look very similar is by using underscores, and you can see that these underscores here don't match the length of these underscores here. So this is using, I don't know, maybe one or two extra underscores in this one. So when you're looking at other methods and other places in the code that are using these classes, it's a pain to see what methods and classes are actually being called and used, because they're so damn similar. Again, here's two functions that look very similar, but the number of underscores separate, which is which, and it's a real pain in the ass, to be honest. But anyway, you can't. It's basically what this does is it will detect what kind of client is accessing the script. It will do a whole bunch of other things like, let's see. I'm trying to think of a couple of the things that it did. So first, it will detect if it's a bot, a search engine, or a user that's accessing the page, wherever this is placed and being used. And from there, it will serve up different content. It will also attempt to access various external servers, and it will try to scan through where it's located on the current application server. So you see here you have a fsoc open function, so it's connecting to something somewhere. Trying to find the other location that I was looking at the other week that showed that I was kind of scanning through where it was currently living. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of different functionality to this. I feel like it would take me really like a whole week to kind of rip all this apart and figure out exactly what each piece is doing. But you can see here, they're making directories, so they're obviously making modifications to the server itself and the application, changing permissions, making files. So a whole bunch of stuff, but man, what a pain in the ass to read through, especially with the underscores. What a great way to obfuscate, but what a pain to it just really, I could see it really deterring people from going over this. Anyway, so that's basically the attack that we experienced on our application server at work. Again, it was kind of a fault of our own. We just weren't, the application itself wasn't being monitored and administered and patched. It's a long story, but it was interesting to see this happening and what it actually evaluated out to and all this code underneath. So I wanted to make a video and show it to everyone and show you guys how you can actually rip it apart and then get to the actual code, and from here, I mean, if you know PHP or I guess whatever language it's coded in, you'll be all set. It's just a matter of digging through the obfuscation and getting to the bottom of it. So if you guys have any questions about this, feel free to leave them in the comments or send me a message or whatever you want to do. I hope this was helpful. I thought it was kind of interesting to work through and follow and try to figure out what this is actually doing, even though it was a real pain to read through sometimes. But nonetheless, it's still kind of cool, I think. Anyway, thanks everybody, and feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need me to explain anything better.